Hey everybody, this is Darren Van Dam and you are watching Flick Connection, the show that helps you get more out of movies. And today, to save you time just constantly searching for something to watch, I'm going to tell you about 20 really great hidden gems you can currently watch on Netflix. So this list is actually just going to be comprised of some really great movie options that most of you have not heard of. In fact, I'll be surprised if any of you have heard of all 20 that I'm about to go over. And these are in no particular order. I kind of grouped them together, and they don't necessarily fit into some of the really specific genres that I typically like to feature on the channel, like sci-fi and horror. So with that, my first pick on the list is one from Australia that actually just came out this past year. It's called Goldstone. Now this is a really great detective movie that's got some good performances from some people that you're probably not even going to recognize, and it revolves around some sex trafficking around a mine in the middle of nowhere in Australia. And it's got a little bit of gunplay in it. It's got definitely some investigation type of stuff going on. It's a little bit heavy, but not too heavy. I feel like even though it does involve sex trafficking, it's fairly accessible, meaning you're not going to be confronted with too many graphic images in this one. And it's just a good all-around, fairly accessible movie. I would akin this one to kind of like Wind River. Not as graphic, but almost as good. Almost as good in a lot of ways, so for that it's a great recommendation. My next pick is also from Australia and also contains a scene in a mine, and this one actually stars Ewan McGregor. It's called Son of a Gun, and a large percentage of this movie takes place in prison. There's an escape, there's a heist, and Ewan McGregor plays a bad dude. He's very rarely a bad guy, but he does a good job in this one because he's not super bad, but he has got a hard edge to him. It looks very good. The performances are great. It never quite hits like the notes high enough to really make this a great movie, which is probably why nobody's talking about it, but it's good enough that it's flown in under the radar, and it still makes a great recommendation here. Now for one I've not only talked about in the past, I did a full review video on it. I'll put a link to that in the description. Is Bad Day for the Cut. Now this one is not in Australia, but it does feature some accents as it takes place in Ireland. And this is a great revenge thriller. And unlike most revenge thrillers, it features a guy who's up there in years. His elderly mother is killed, and he goes on what could maybe be described as a rampage, and he's pretty efficient at it. And this guy's he's probably in his mid-60s. He's a farmer. He goes after people with a shotgun, and not only is it fairly realistic, it still maintains itself as an entertaining movie from beginning to end. It's maybe a little bit slow getting in, but perfect placement on this list because I consider it to be one of the best hidden gems on the platform right now. Another one that takes place in the desert, like my first two picks, but this one has a couple of pretty big stars, is Mojave. Now this one stars Oscar Isaac and that guy that's in a bunch of other things. I really like this one. It's actually written by the same guy who wrote the American version of The Departed. It's actually written and directed by him. And it's a little highbrow, maybe a little bit too highbrow for its own good. I was able to overlook that and still enjoy it. The cinematography in this is beautiful. The performances from these two guys are great. And it's a slow burn. There's not a lot that's happening, but it is sort of a psychological game of cat and mouse between these two pretty highly intelligent, pretty capable characters that are kind of trying to kill each other. It's good. And again, just like with Ewan McGregor, Oscar Isaac is usually the hero. He is a bad dude in this one, and he plays it really well, and for that I really liked it. Another one that has somebody way off character, I don't know, maybe that's kind of the theme for this video, is Black Sea with Jude Law. Now, Jude Law is playing a guy heading up an expedition in a submarine to reclaim some Nazi gold from a sunken submarine. So it's essentially, even though they're contracted to do it, it's essentially a heist movie that takes place in a submarine. And so with that, you get all the great elements from a heist movie, and you get all the great elements from submarine movies. And I love me some submarine movies, so much so that sometimes I'll actually just lay down in the shower with my clothes on and just turn the shower on full blast to simulate being in a submarine that was hit by a torpedo. I don't know. We all have our own things, but I really, really liked Black Sea. It just got added recently, and so it is one of the reasons I decided to make this list. I wasn't quite sure where to put it. It might fit on an upcoming thriller list, but it is a fantastic hidden gem that's only a few years old. Before we move on to the rest of the narrative movies, I want to tell you about a quick documentary that you really need to check out. A movie called Free Solo just won Best Documentary at the Academy Awards, and it is a fantastic documentary. I highly recommend it. Free Soloing is about bear climbing with no gear. Very, very intense documentary. Very, very well done. You can only access it via rental at the moment. However, the same director did one called Valley Uprising just a few years ago that's also about rock climbing. Very good work. If you like Free Solo and you saw it and you're wanting to scratch that itch some more, this is a great way to go. A personal favorite of mine on this list is called Brick. This is directed by Rian Johnson, who did the latest Star Wars movie, and even though a lot of people weren't happy with that, he does have some great films under his belt, movies like Looper with Bruce Willis and Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Joseph Gordon-Levitt actually plays a detective in Brick, and he's a detective in high school, which sounds like it's something for kids, and this movie is not. Basically, you get this neo-noir thing that takes place on the grounds and thereabouts of a high school in suburbia, but you get more than that. You get these really odd performances. The dialogue's written in a really weird, kind of gumshoey, snappy kind of way, a very unnatural way, and the way the movie's directed is also a little odd. It's a little offbeat, and it's great. It's really, really entertaining and fun to watch. There's some really odd, exaggerated characters, and it all plays together really beautiful, and so you get another detective story that's really familiar feeling, but also unlike anything else you've seen. So I did kind of group these together, but another detective story that is really odd and has a weird pace to it is Too Late with John Hawkes. Now, I love John Hawkes. He's one of my favorite actors, but this movie really is just a series. I want to say it's about 8 scenes, and they're all done in one take, and some of them are, in excess of 10 minutes, and they're great. Now, there's really odd acting in the beginning that almost took me out of the movie, but if you get past that, there's a guy in a uniform. I'll just give you a hint. There's a guy in a uniform who's got a really odd performance. Once you get past that element, this movie's really great. It plays out almost kind of like a play because of the long takes, and it's gritty. It's got this LA underbelly vibe, yet you move through time a little bit in it. It's just got a bunch of really great elements, and it is slow. I stayed with it because I'm a fan of John Hawkes, and it was just keeping me engaged enough, but there is, in my opinion, a great payoff for this one. It's a great watch, especially if you clicked on this video. You're looking for something unique and different that you've never seen. Too Late is a little bit of a gamble, depending on your taste, but if you like it, it will be worth the risk. And for the life of me, I cannot remember the name of the next movie, but it stars Christopher Plummer as a, not a hitman, but as a Holocaust survivor that has been set on basically a suicide mission at the end of his life. Like, he leaves a retirement home to go hunt down Nazis, a series of them. He's got a list of names, and it's just his job to go hunt them down, and things don't quite go according to plan. And it works out well. Like I liked the way things played out. There was a moment mid-movie where I'm like, man, is this where they're going with this thing? And then they didn't. They did something else, and I was very happy with the direction of the movie. If I could only remember the name of it, yeah, I could help you out, but I'll figure it out, and I'll put it sort of right on the bottom of the screen here. But It's a great little thriller that's, again, it's kind of slow paced, which is probably why you don't hear a lot of people talking about it, but great performance from Plummer and a couple of others in the movie as well. Remember, the name was Remember. The name was Remember. Speaking of remembering, some of you will remember last week we played a game of rock, paper, scissors in honor of Animal World, which is about rock, paper, scissors, essentially. I got such a good response from that. I wanted to do a little something else, a little interactive thing here in the middle of this video. I am going to show you 3 cards to the screen fairly briefly. Pick one, memorize it, and then I got a little surprise. So just take a look at those. Pick your favorite out. Keep it in your mind. I'm shuffling them. If I get it right, click the subscribe button and click the like button. And if I do not do either of those 2 things. Real quick, off the top of the deck is this your card. Impressed? I thought so. So let's go ahead and move on with the rest of this list. Okay, my next segment features a couple of weird ones. I'll start off kind of light with one called Turbo Kid. Now, this is one I mentioned 2 years ago, but it's been a while since I talked about it, so I'll be brief. Excuse me? Really weird, futuristic movie that looks like an after-school special. It looks like it's something done for kids, and it is not. This ends up, just fair warning, this ends up being a gruesome gore fest that is super fun with lasers and power gloves and 80s electronic music and flying saw blades and fights to the death and all kinds of like weird, crazy stuff. And it works. It works really well, actually. Keep in mind, it is a low-budget movie, but if you're looking for something fun, this is probably the most fun out of anyone I've listed, and it's really great. It's been on Netflix for a really long time. I don't know that it's going anywhere anytime soon, but if you've yet to pick it up, now's a great time. My next pick is a movie that contains more farts than a break room at a broccoli farm, and that is Swiss Army Man, where Harry Potter himself, Danny Radcliffe, plays a corpse that cannot stop farting. It sounds like a silly comedy, and it's weird that it's not. It's really weird that it's not. It's actually kind of a beautiful little art movie about a man trapped on an island, and he befriends this corpse, and I can't say too much about this movie without ruining what happens, but it is as weird as it sounds, and if the premise has you interested, as well as some of this footage, definitely watch it. If you're repulsed and disgusted that I would even include such a thing on a list, don't watch it, and we'll move on to the only Netflix original on the list that just did not get enough buzz, Cam. Now, I did mention this on a list recently, so again, I will be brief, but this is about what's called a cam girl, which is essentially a self-employed porn star. And she works from home, she works on a computer, and weird things start to happen. Weird, potentially supernatural things start to happen. This one to me felt a little bit like an episode of Black Mirror. A lot of sexual content in this one, a lot of it. But it did do some interesting things. Like it turns into this weird thriller, supernatural thing as well, and I kind of had trouble keeping up with it, but I was surprised at how well put together it was and how good it was, how good the performances were. It's a really good little Netflix original that just didn't get a lot of buzz when it was released, and if you missed it or overlooked it or had been thinking about it, there's my 2 cents.
I brought a girl with me, so please don't be a jerk.
Are you a hooker?
Dylan.
Or a prostitute, I mean?
She's out of my league, is way out of my purview in that I don't recommend romantic comedies. I'm somewhat allergic to them, but I gotta say, I honestly kind of liked this one. It had some good performances. It was a little lighthearted. It was funnier than I find a lot of them to be, and I didn't feel like it was retreading too many of the tropes that you get out of movies like that. So if you're in the mood for such a thing, definitely watch it. But if you feel like maybe you need to give up a little bit and watch watch a rom-com sometime this month, this would be a great one to watch. It is funny enough to kind of keep you engaged. It's not going to make you throw up. I do have a mild allergy. I'm starting to feel some swelling. Typically, explosions help with this. Oh my God, that's so much better. So Kill the Irishman is a really good little gangster flick that, again, kind of like got some buzz when it came out. It was kind of a straight to video or straight to VOD when it was released several years ago. Christopher Walken makes a very brief appearance. Don't let it trick you into thinking this is a Christopher Walken movie. It is not. It's got a relatively small cast, but they all do a great job. And if you like gangster movies, this is a good one. It's a low budget one. You can tell at times it's fairly low rent. For instance, the main character, it clearly has a fake hair the entire time and it does not look good. However, if you can look past some of the low rent elements, it's a great story. It's based on a true story about an Irishman who is connected to the mob that they could not kill. They kept trying to kill this guy. There is a ton of car bombs in this movie. And again, it's all based on a true story, and it does have that vibe. It's got sort of the kind of fast-paced, like, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened, and I like that. I thought it worked well for this movie. Again, because I'm such a big fan of the genre, I was able to overlook some of the smaller elements that, you know, are not great. There was enough richness there to keep me engaged, making it, in my opinion, a great little hidden gem. If you're the opposite of me and you don't like gunfire and explosions, maybe you're allergic to those instead of rom-coms, definitely do not, under any circumstances, watch Lord of War with Nicolas Cage. This is a fantastic crime movie. I've heard this one actually compared to Goodfellas in a lot of ways, which is my favorite movie of all time. And while it's not as good as Goodfellas, it feels a lot like it. It's got similar pacing. It's kind of fun in the first half, and things begin to unravel for our main character somewhat in a different way. I mean, that's not a spoiler, but it's got some similar flavor to it, which I thought was great. It's about an arms dealer, big time arms dealer. It's got some really great stylish flourishes in it that I loved. It's a very, very entertaining performance. Nicolas Cage is not over the top, but he gets close, which is right in his sweet spot. This is one of his better performances, in my opinion. One of his last really great performances until just recently. So for those reasons, I love it. I've owned it on DVD for forever. And if you've yet to see it, it's one of the better picks off of this list. Nearing the end of the list, Locke stars Tom Hardy, and only Tom Hardy, in the movie where he's in a car the entire time. You may have heard of it. It's a low-budget movie for obvious reasons, but his performance is great, and the story that unravels throughout this narrative, just through him in a phone in a car, is really compelling. It's not what it looks like. It's not a crime thriller. It's not him hunting a murderer or anything like that. It's a little bit of a smaller story, a little bit more of a personal story, yet it kept me engaged the entire time. I've watched it more than once, and it works well for me. The performances across the phone are surprisingly good. It's a great little piece of entertainment that has a good story, and I think it has a good nature to it, even though it does deal with some heavy subject matter. Tom Hardy really carries it. If you're a fan of him, this one is required viewing. I misspoke earlier. Wheelman is another Netflix original that really has flown under the radar, and it borrows the same concept as Locke. It stars Frank Grillo as a wheelman, a driver for organized crime, and the movie mostly takes place from inside the car. Like, the camera doesn't leave the car or Frank Grillo's character. This one, however, is a gritty crime drama. There's some action in it, not a ton, but there's a shootout, there's a chase, there's him trying to figure out what's going on. Somebody's like trying to pull one over on him and frame him for something, and he's trying to like solve things and keep people he loves alive, and it all happens within this car. Really great stuff. I'd never heard anything about it, watched it on a whim one night, and have continued to love it. I've watched it more than once. It, again, for a Netflix original you probably missed, Wheelman's a great one. And my final pick is the Autopsy of Jane Doe, which I have talked about recently. It was on my horror list, but it was interrupted during that list. Go watch that video. There's a link in the description. But I was so brief in my description, I wanted to give it a little bit more of a review on this video. So this is a little bit more substantive than the ones that I've done so far in this video. And this one stars Emile Hirsch and Brian Cox running what is kind of a family-owned mortuary. And they are given a body late one night. It's a Jane Doe. Nobody knows anything about her, and they have to perform an autopsy. It's in the title. However, as they're doing this, very weird things start to happen. So what really works for this movie is not only do the two of them give great performances, but before any of the weird stuff starts to happen, it's just an interesting way to look. Like, you get to see kind of what happens with an autopsy. Now, if you don't have morbid curiosity, you're probably not going to really dig this movie anyway. But if you do, that part of the movie, again, before the supernatural stuff starts happening, it's still very interesting. And then they start to tease it in, and not too slowly. I thought it came on somewhat quickly, and it gets it turns into a horror movie. This is the only horror movie on the list, and it's one of the best ones on Netflix right now. It was only recently added. I cannot recommend this one enough. Obviously, I recommend all the ones on this list. Strong recommendation here. Any kind of horror fan should really enjoy this one. I've yet to hear anybody say anything bad about it in the comments from the other video. So if you want to watch that one, I had a lot of fun making that one. You can check it out in the description below, as well as a few others. I'll put in a few other recent videos as well. If you're new, click the subscribe button. Even if I didn't get your card right, you're welcome to click the subscribe button. And if you want to support the channel, there's a number of ways. All the links for those are in the description below. Patreon, Teespring store, Amazon link, all of that, whatever you want to do. But I will keep making videos like this as long as you keep watching them. Thanks for checking this one out, and you will see me on the next one. Shit, that was only 19.